The ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, the hum of violins filling the air as guests in shimmering gowns and sharp tuxedos mingled with glasses of champagne in hand. It was the city's most prestigious charity gala, an event that drew politicians, business magnates, celebrities, and society's elite. For most attendees, it was a chance to flaunt wealth and connections. For others, it was about being seen in the right circles. But just outside the grand entrance, an elderly black woman named Mrs. Eleanor Hayes approached with steady steps. Her dress was modest, a navy blue gown that had clearly been worn before, paired with sensible shoes and a pearl necklace that, while simple, carried personal history. Her gray curls were tucked neatly beneath a hat, and in her eyes shone a quiet dignity. She clutched her invitation tightly, the embossed card a golden key to the night's celebration. The doorman glanced at her, then at her attire, and his expression hardened. With one swift motion, he stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, I think you may be at the wrong event," he said coolly. Eleanor's brow furrowed. "I don't believe so," she replied, her voice calm. She held out her invitation, her hand steady. "This is the charity gala, correct? I was invited." The man didn't bother to look at the card. Instead, he scanned her up and down, lips curling into a dismissive smirk. "This gala is for distinguished guests, not passers-by looking for a free meal." His words, dripping with disdain, carried just far enough for nearby guests to hear. A couple entering behind Eleanor chuckled quietly, their laughter like daggers. Eleanor straightened her posture, refusing to let their cruelty pierce her composure. "I assure you," she said firmly, "I was invited." At that moment, a young event coordinator rushed over, clipboard in hand. She glanced nervously between Eleanor and the doorman. "Is there a problem here?" "This woman is trying to sneak in," the doorman announced. "No ticket, no status, clearly doesn't belong." Eleanor extended her invitation once more, and this time the coordinator took it. Her eyes widened when she read the embossed name. But before she could speak, the doorman snatched it from her hands and stuffed it back toward Eleanor. "Fake," he declared. "You can buy these knockoffs online. We're not letting just anyone waltz in." Gasps echoed from the small crowd gathering at the door. Eleanor's cheeks warmed, not with shame, but with restrained anger. She had faced prejudice before, but the sting of being humiliated so publicly cut deeper than usual. Still, she did not falter. She folded her hands gracefully over the invitation and said evenly, "You're making a mistake." But neither the doorman nor the chuckling guests knew just how big that mistake was, or how swiftly the truth would turn this glittering evening upside down. Eleanor's steady insistence didn't slow the doorman's arrogance. He waved over two security guards in black suits, as though he were dealing with an intruder. Their imposing figures loomed beside her, ready to escort her away without a second thought. "Sir, there's no need for this," Eleanor said, her voice calm but firm. "I've told you I was invited. My name is printed clearly on that card." But the doorman sneered, lowering his voice just enough to be cruel. "Lady, you don't belong here. People like you never do." The words landed like stones, echoing in the silence around them. Conversations at the door stalled. Guests glanced over champagne flutes, whispering behind manicured hands. To them, Eleanor's simple gown and worn shoes told a story they believed without question. She was an outsider trying to slip into a world beyond her reach. One woman in a sequined dress leaned toward her husband and muttered, "Imagine showing up here dressed like that." Her husband chuckled, not even bothering to hide it. The security guards shifted uncomfortably, clearly taking their orders from the doorman but unsettled by the attention the scene was drawing. Eleanor, however, refused to shrink. She lifted her chin, her posture radiating a quiet grace that no insult could erode. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked, her voice steady. "Because you're making an assumption based on nothing more than appearance." The doorman scoffed. "Assumption? Please, I can spot a fraud a mile away. Now move along before I have you escorted off the property." At that, the young event coordinator tried again to intervene. Wait, sir, her name really is on the list. I saw it myself. But the doorman cut her off with a glare. And I'm saying it's a scam. Do you really think someone looking like this has a seat reserved inside? He gestured at Eleanor with a dismissive wave, his tone laced with venom. The crowd murmured again, their stares pressing against Eleanor like a physical weight. Still, she remained poised, though her patience thinned. You should look more carefully, she replied softly, because appearances can deceive. The doorman ignored her warning. He gestured for the guards to move her aside. And as one of them reached for her arm, Eleanor's voice rang out clearly enough to silence the crowd. I said, you are making a mistake. The guards hesitated, their hands hovering. Something in her tone, a steel born of years of facing down ignorance, made them pause. But the doorman only rolled his eyes, convinced of his authority. To him, she was nothing but an inconvenience, a shadow daring to intrude on a world bathed in light. What he didn't realize was that her light outshone the chandeliers above them, and soon, that truth would silence the entire ballroom. Reluctantly, and only after the young coordinator insisted again that Eleanor's name was on the guest list, the guards stepped back. The doorman scowled, clearly irritated but unwilling to spark more commotion in front of wealthy patrons with cameras flashing nearby. He waved her through with a mocking bow. Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you when you stick out like a sore thumb. Eleanor walked past him with measured grace, shoulders squared, invitation in hand. She didn't offer him a glance, but the sting of his disdain lingered like smoke. As she entered the grand ballroom, the glitter of crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors. Waiters in white gloves floated between tables, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres, while a string quartet played from a gilded balcony. The space was dazzling, but Eleanor noticed the way conversations dipped as she walked by. Women in designer gowns leaned toward one another, whispering behind jeweled hands. A man in a tailored suit muttered audibly, "Who let her in?" Another laughed under his breath. "Looks like somebody wandered in from the street." Every comment was designed to diminish, to reduce her presence to an anomaly. Yet Eleanor kept her composure, gliding across the room like she had every right to be there, because she did. She had faced worse than whispers. Still, the cruelty stung. She passed a group of socialites gathered near the champagne tower, one of whom sneered openly. "This is a gala, not a soup kitchen," the woman said, her voice loud enough to carry. Laughter followed, brittle and cruel. The young coordinator, who had followed Eleanor inside, looked mortified. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, cheeks red. "They shouldn't treat you this way. If it helps, I know for a fact your name is not just on the list, it's highlighted. That means you're one of the honored guests." Eleanor gave her a gentle smile. "I know who I am, dear, and soon so will they." She moved toward a reserved table near the stage, ignoring the stares that trailed behind her. People shifted uncomfortably as she passed, some pulling their chairs in closer as though proximity to her might stain their evening attire. The irony wasn't lost on Eleanor. These people wrapped themselves in jewels and arrogance, but it was their spirits that looked impoverished. When she finally took her seat, the murmurs didn't stop. One man nearby leaned toward his companion and muttered, "I bet she doesn't even know what fork to use." Eleanor folded her napkin neatly on her lap, her movements deliberate, graceful, and dignified. She had no need to match their pettiness with retorts, because soon, the spotlight of truth would turn, and those mocking voices would find themselves stunned into silence. The evening's program began with the host stepping onto the stage, microphone in hand, his voice booming across the glittering ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor not only generosity but also those whose lives embody resilience, leadership, and service to others. And tonight, we are privileged to welcome someone extraordinary." Eleanor sat quietly at her table, eyes steady on the stage, while around her the whispers continued. The man beside her leaned toward his wife. "Who do you think they're talking about? Certainly not her." His wife chuckled in agreement. The host continued, "Our keynote speaker is a woman whose work has transformed communities across the nation. She has dedicated decades to advocating for education, housing, and healthcare for underserved families. Her name is respected in boardrooms and classrooms alike. Murmurs rippled through the room. Guests exchanged curious looks, eager to see who this mystery figure would be. And so, the host said with a flourish, "Please join me in welcoming tonight's honored guest, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes." The room froze. Gasps broke out, followed by stunned silence. Dozens of eyes turned toward Eleanor, who rose gracefully from her chair. The very same people who had whispered, mocked, and dismissed her now stared as though they were seeing her for the first time. Eleanor walked to the stage, every step measured, her presence commanding. The chandeliers glittered above her, but it was her dignity that lit the room. She took the microphone, her voice steady and rich with quiet strength. "Good evening," she began. "I want to thank the organizers of this event for inviting me here tonight. But before I speak about the cause that has brought us together, I must address what happened at your very doors." A nervous hush fell over the audience. The doorman, standing stiffly at the back of the room, paled. "Tonight," Eleanor continued, "I was told I did not belong, that my presence here was unworthy, that I was poor." She let the word hang in the air, sharp and cutting. "But I am not here because of the clothes I wear or the jewels I own. I am here because of the lives I have dedicated myself to serving, lives many of you overlook when you measure worth by wealth alone." She paused, scanning the crowd, letting the weight of her words settle. "You judged me before you knew me, and perhaps in that judgment, you revealed more about yourselves than about me." A ripple of shame swept across the ballroom. Some lowered their eyes. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Eleanor's tone softened, though her conviction remained. "I stand here not to condemn, but to remind. True wealth is not found in gowns or chandeliers. It is found in compassion, in justice, and in the courage to see dignity in every soul." The room erupted in applause, not polite or forced, but thunderous. The kind that shakes walls and hearts alike. Those who had mocked her now clapped the loudest, their faces flushed with guilt. As Eleanor stepped down from the stage, the once dismissive crowd now parted for her with reverence. The same doors that had nearly closed in her face were now held open wide.